Welcome to Grant Writing Made Clear. The truth is, the grant writing process isn't always clear, but with the right guidance, proven actionable strategies, and expert insights, the process becomes easier, simpler, and yes, clearer. I am Dr. Trenette, your host of Grant Writing Made Clear, and a former nonprofit president turned distinguished professor and behavioral scientist with 2 decades of grant writing experience. I remember what it was like to be a busy nonprofit leader with little time but big financial sustainability concerns. Over the years, I have transformed my skills from securing $1,000 foundation grants to winning multi-million-dollar federal grants. I created this podcast in response to the grant writing coaching requests I've received from nonprofit leaders, entrepreneurs, and professors over the years. Join me each week as I reveal insider strategies and share key lessons that turn wishful thinking into winning applications. Pull up a seat and get ready to be inspired, empowered, and transformed. Whether you're a beginner or a pro looking to sharpen your skills and create a life you love, you're in the right place, my friend. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Grant Writing Made Clear, where we navigate the complex world of funding together and where your growth and impact are my purpose. I am your host, Dr. Trenette. Today we are tackling a question that sounds simple, but it really is not. So today we are talking about, are you ready to lead a grant? Are you ready to lead a grant? Winning a grant feels exciting. We enjoy receiving the notice of award. We can't wait to send a celebration email, maybe post it on social media. And we are hopeful about the impact. The winning the grant, it feels so good, so exciting. I have a friend now who received a really good score on an NIH application, and she is checking the system on a regular basis to see whether or not she has received a notice of award. So that part is exciting. I am cheering her on. It's exciting. We love the idea of winning a grant because it means that we are closer towards being able to do the work that we want to do so that we can support others, so that we can build programs that we test to assess whether or not they are effective. So we are excited about the idea of winning a grant. But leading a grant is not simply writing a grant application. Leading a grant includes management. It includes team leadership, compliance, implementation, doing the work, and certainly it includes reporting. And sometimes or oftentimes what I see is that graduate programs and doctoral programs do not train us, really, if we're honest, for either. They don't train us well in how to write grant proposals, and they also do not train us well in grant leadership. And so I wanted to talk about both. We talk about grant writing, but we don't always talk as much about grant leadership, and it is important that we prepare for both. So today we're talking about grant leadership. Are you ready to lead a grant? And I want to say something I wish more people would say out loud, and that is grant writing is hard. It is hard, and to do it well, it takes time. But I also want to acknowledge that high quality implementation, doing it well, is also very hard. And it can be even harder than writing a grant application, depending on the complexity of the project. So I want to acknowledge that, yes, writing grant applications are not easy. They're not a walk in the park, right? But doing the work, after you're funded, doing the work can also not always be a walk in the park. And so I want us just to open this conversation with honesty as we think about why we're even having this episode today. And so today I want us to think about how we can prepare to lead well. Yes, you are hopefully tuning in not only to this podcast, but you are attending workshops on grant writing, you are attending trainings on grants writing, but we also need to have a program that includes leadership training as well. We've discussed this in the past that funders do not just invest in ideas. Certainly, they want to see an idea that is significant and innovative, but funders also invest in people, in leaders, in their teams, in people who can carry the ideas that they write about, carry them forward responsibly. And so we need to recognize that the funder is not only looking at the idea and the methods, but they're also looking at the team. I wrote a grant application, and part of this grant application is the LOI first, followed by the application, and we've made it through both stages. And the next stage is a site visit because they want to see the people. They want to see the team. They really want to know, can we trust you to move this idea forward well? And so I want you to remember that is not simply about your idea. It's not simply about the methods, but it's also about your team. That is the reason when you are writing a grant application, you should think long and hard about your team. Who will be at the table? Who will bring value? Not simply overlap. We don't want a ton of overlap. We want value, unique value. And we also want people who are reliable, people you can work well with, people who have good interpersonal skills, right? So you have to think about the entire team, because not only are you going to have to work with these people, but the funder is going to look at their CV, at their bio sketch, and maybe even meet the team in person to assess whether or not you all are a great team that they can fund. And so it's important to think about, am I ready to lead a grant now? Am I ready to lead this grant now? Am I ready to lead a large grant now? And it's important because if you secure a grant before you are ready, if you secure a grant that is larger than your capacity, it can overwhelm your capacity. It can stress your team, and it can create challenges with you in the community. And these challenges can make the next grant harder to secure. So the goal is not just to get funded one time. We are not looking for one-hit wonders here. We are looking for people who have a program that they want to continue to fund, or a line of research, a line of inquiry that they want to continue to fund. So the goal is to deliver with quality. And then we want to build on that foundation for future funding. So we don't want to get a grant prematurely. We don't want to get a grant that we're not ready for. So maybe we need to start with a pilot study. We start with a pilot study, we test it out, and we assess how it goes, and then the next grant is larger. So today we're really talking about readiness. Are we ready for grants? Are we ready for a grant of this size and nature? And part of readiness is thinking about ourselves as leaders. And you all have heard me talk about this before, about the difference between a leader and a manager. So a leader develops the vision. A leader names the mission and the purpose and sets the direction. A leader holds the vision, a leader names the mission and a purpose and sets the direction. And I think that if you want to be a principal investigator or a project director, each funder has a different name for this title that serves as the grant leader. I think you do need to be a leader, right? If you're going to write a grant, I think you need to be a leader. You need to be prepared to set the vision. Thinking now as you're listening, do you have a mission? Do you have a mission statement? Do you have a vision statement? If not, I encourage you today, after this episode, to sit down and to develop your mission statement, to develop your vision statement, to think about your direction. Where do you plan to go over the next 5 to 10 years? I want you to be a leader. But to lead a grant, you also have to be a manager. You also have to be a manager. So again, in my opinion, you need to be a leader, but it's also important to have someone at the table who is a manager. And a manager builds the systems. A manager assigns responsibilities, tracks progress, solves problems, and ensures delivery on time. And I do believe that ideally, you as the principal investigator will become both. You'll be the leader and the manager, because some of us do not have the manager skill set or the manager nature. And if not, then I think it's important that you recognize that. Sometimes we're not honest with ourselves. I see that so often. Sometimes we are not honest with ourselves. Are we a manager? And if not, that's okay, because we can't be everything. And so if you're not a manager, my recommendation is that you ensure you hire a manager. Ensure you build a team that fits and fills any gaps. And why, you ask? Because a funder does not care how visionary you are if your reports are always late. They don't care how ambitious you are if the work is not done well. And so it's important that you have someone at the table who is a good manager. And for some of us, again, I like to think I am a decent leader and manager, but even though I think I am decent at both, I still have a project manager on my team to help ensure that the management is done well. Because here's the thing, even if you are good at both, you may not have the time to do both well. Because oftentimes we may not be on the grants at a large effort, right? Oftentimes we are on grants at about 15% effort, which is only about 6 hours per week. At 6 hours per week, you probably don't have the time to be an excellent manager. And so it's important that you bring someone to the table who will have the time to focus on the pieces you can't focus on. And so in my opinion, strong leaders are visionaries who are relational and know how to develop systems. But if not, they are aware enough to know that they need someone at the table who will help them develop and maintain systems, who will help ensure that the delivery is of a high quality nature. And so ideally, a leader has the mission, has the vision, but also has the plan, because the plan is helpful for the direction that I talked about earlier. So you need to be able to develop a work plan, to be able to develop a plan of action, and all while maintaining genuine relationships. So it is a lot to be a leader, because again, you are expected, in my opinion, to be the visionary, to set the vision, to set the mission, to develop the work plan and the plan of action, while also being a leader who is able to maintain good relationships on the team, a leader who is able to encourage and motivate people, to inspire people to want to do their best, to be able to manage a budget, and to be able to develop systems and track everything so things go well. But again, if you don't have some of those skills, you can invite people to the team to fill any gaps. And so what is one of the first signs that you're ready to lead a grant? I do believe is when you have clarity about your mission. Maybe you have clarity about your mission in your mind, but it's not on paper. I want to encourage you to put it on paper. Pause and put it on paper. Write the mission. Make it plain, right? Make it clear. Make it simple. In my opinion, a good mission statement is one that you just know you can just share it really quickly because you know it so well. We're not looking for a one-page mission statement. We're looking for a brief and clear mission statement. If you cannot clearly explain your mission, that is why your work matters and how the grant aligns with your mission, I believe you will struggle with that grant. You will struggle with that grant. If you're not clear about how the grant relates to your mission, I believe you will struggle with the grants. And so I think it is important that you take a moment to write your mission statement. And again, we want it brief. We want it brief and we want it to be genuine. Have you heard of the elevator pitch? Have you heard of the elevator pitch? I went to DC in January to a conference, and coincidentally, I was sitting beside a doctoral student on my plane. And we started chatting and she introduced herself. And as part of our conversation, I was asking some questions about her program of research. And she said, "Oh, you're asking for my elevator pitch." And she gave me her elevator pitch. Do you have an elevator pitch? Can you explain your mission in 1 or 2 sentences or in 60 seconds to someone outside your field? Can you explain your mission in 60 seconds? If not, there is no shame. There's no shame because we all started somewhere. I am just sharing with you that that is your next step. If you've not developed your mission, that is your next step to develop or refine your mission statement. Maybe you did develop a mission statement several years ago. I want to encourage you to go back to it. We don't have to be wedded to a mission statement. We can refine our mission statement to reflect where we are now and our current thoughts. So I want to encourage you. I want to encourage everyone who's listening today to develop your mission statement. And if you have previously developed a mission statement, I want to encourage you to go back to it and refine it if needed. Because when your mission is clear, decision-making becomes easier. But when your mission is fuzzy, you start chasing money that pulls you off course. Have you ever seen someone who's always writing a grant application, always one after the next? More than likely their mission is not clear. Or if their mission is clear, somehow they don't recognize that quality beats quantity when it comes to grant writing. In publications, I feel a little differently sometimes. But with grant writing, I believe quality beats quantity almost always. So I want to encourage you to develop your mission. We want mission clarity. Mission clarity is what our goal is. Another sign that you're ready to lead a grant is if your infrastructure can hold the grant. Is when you have enough infrastructure to hold the weight of a grant. So I want you to think about a grant like bringing home a beautiful grand piano. We have a grand piano in our living room, and we would not have brought that piano in our house if the floor could not hold it. And so we don't want the beautiful grand piano if the foundation cannot hold it. If the floor cannot hold it, the piano is not the blessing we hoped it to be. In fact, the piano becomes a problem. So what is your floor? Do you have the infrastructure? So let's talk about infrastructure. What exactly do I mean there? First, I'm talking about financial systems. When I say infrastructure, I'm talking about financial systems. Do you have a reliable way to track spending accurately and consistently? I want to tell you the truth about budgets, and it's not always glamorous, but budget management gets no glory. Budget management gets, I'll say little glory, gets little glory. Very few people celebrate a perfectly reconciled ledger, but it is one of the fastest ways to lose a funder's trust if it goes wrong. And if you lose funding due to financial management concerns, it can be hard to restore your reputation. So really thinking about your financial systems is important. Is there someone on your team who can help with budget management? Who can manage your finances, right? So that's one of the first questions I want you to think about is, do I have someone on the team who can help manage the finances if we are awarded a grant? Think about that. I also want to share something that people don't always think about. My team, sometimes they hadn't thought about it until I started sharing with them how I think about budgets. But grant leadership is also about pacing your spending. So that means not overspending early and not underspending and having to scramble late. So pacing is important. Knowing what is allowable before you promise it in writing is important. So as you think about being a grant leader, I want you to remember that you have to pace your spending. And again, if budget management is not your strength, that is fine. But you must be aware enough to hire or partner with someone who is excellent at it. and you must stay involved enough to understand what is happening. I review my reconciliation reports every month. Every month. For each grant, I review them closely because it's important that you stay on top of the finances. Also, when I refer to infrastructure, I am thinking about the people. Do we have the people to fulfill this grant? So do you have staff, partners, or collaborators who can actually help you deliver the work? That's part of your infrastructure, the people. Because here's the reality. A grant is not a solo sport. I promise you, it is not a solo sport. It is the ultimate team sport. Grants are the ultimate team sport. If you are the program leader and the evaluator and the budget manager and the report writer and the data analyst and the data manager, if you're all the things, you're probably not leading, you're probably surviving. And survival is not a long-term strategy, in my opinion. So I want you to think about your team. Do you have a team? Are people prepared? Maybe they're not on your team now, but they're prepared to be a part of your team if the grant is funded. So thinking about your team, thinking about implementation capacity is important as you think about whether or not you're ready to lead a grant. And then policies and procedures. Do you have a policies and procedures manual? If not, I would encourage you to develop a policies and procedures manual. And maybe you do not have one personally, but your system has one. So maybe you work for an employer who has policies and procedures. And if so, I would encourage you to access the policies and procedures manual so you are familiar with how things are done. What are the systems for hiring? What are the rules around hiring? And so I want you to think about the policies and procedures and to either develop a manual if you are in a setting where you are the leader. So I would encourage you to develop a policy and procedures manual. If you are employed, I would encourage you to find the policies and procedures manual and to familiarize yourself with it. And again, you don't have to be perfect here, but we need a system. We need guidance. We need some clarity so that you can play within the boundaries of the guidelines. Another sign that you're ready to lead a grant is when you have detail awareness and compliance maturity. I think a lot of times we like to be big idea people, but in my opinion, a grant leader is not detail allergic. Here's the reality. Grants have rules. Grants have timelines. And grants have expectations. Some of these are clear. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they'll learn the hard way. You do not have to be the compliance expert on your team, but you do need enough awareness to know when to ask questions, to know the questions that you need to ask, and to catch problems early. If you are not strong in compliance, in budget, in management, the answer is not to avoid leading forever. I do want you to lead. The answer is to build a team and a workflow that protects the grant. I want you to build a team and a workflow that protects the grant. You will do a lot of work to get your grant, and we want to protect it when we get it. And we want to deliver well. We want to deliver well. And I want to talk a bit more about capacity. I believe you're ambitious. I believe you're here because you're ambitious, and I love that. But I do want us to talk a bit more about capacity, because leading a grant requires decision-making under pressure. It requires delegation, communication. It requires conflict management. And so here's a rule of thumb that I can share with you that I think will help. And here's the rule of thumb as you think about all the things that leading a grant requires, right? If you are already exhausted before you even start writing a grant proposal, you may want to find some time to refresh. Because again, when you become exhausted, you don't do your best work. So if you can find some time to maybe step away from grant writing, come back when you are refreshed, I believe you'll do your best work. And then if you are awarded the grant, you don't go into the grant completely exhausted. Because if you are tired now, like not just tired, because we're often tired, right? Not just tired, but if you are exhausted now, before you write the grant proposal, or maybe as you're writing it, if this is a quick turnaround grant opportunity, some grants like the NIH, we know that takes some time before you're going to actually get the grant. So I'm not talking about grants like the NIH that takes a long time before you actually would be awarded the grant. But some grants have pretty quick turnaround, as in some foundations can fund you within 2 to 3 months. If it's one of those kinds of grants, I want you to think about whether or not you have the capacity to lead that grant when it's awarded. Because grants will add meetings. Grants will add deadlines, which means stress around those deadlines, potentially. Grants will add reporting. Grants will add responsibilities that you cannot ignore. So I want to make sure that you have the capacity, all the things we've talked about, right? The infrastructure, the financial systems, the team, all those things. But I also want to make sure that you, the person listening to me, is not exhausted and can really hit the ground running when the grant is awarded. So I do want you to take some time to think about, am I ready to not only write this grant application, submit the grant application, but hit the ground running if it is awarded within the next couple months? Again, I think it is different if it's a funder like the NIH that takes quite a bit of time before you actually receive the grant. Honestly, a grant does not always create the capacity you need to fulfill your deliverables. But I will tell you what a grant will do. A grant will expose what is missing. So a grant will expose if you don't have the capacity to lead it well. If the capacity is not there, that will likely be exposed. If the budget management piece is not there, that will likely be exposed. So we want to make sure that we can create the capacity that is needed to lead a grant well. And one of the best ways to learn how to lead a grant is to serve in a supporting role on someone else's grant first. You probably heard the quote that in order to lead well, you have to serve well. I believe that's so true. And so I think if you want to think about not only how to write grant applications, which is critical because you'll not be able to lead a grant if you can't write them, right? But I think if you want to think about also, how do I lead this grant when it is awarded? I want to encourage you to think about serving in a supporting role on someone else's grant, because you'll be able to really witness what grant leadership looks like. So feel free to reach out to people and collaborate with them, and you can serve as a co-investigator where maybe you are leading one of those aims and maybe you're running the analysis. Whatever is needed, I do want you to ensure that you're serving well, right? That you have served well by supporting someone else's grant, because you will see what is done well when you do that. When you serve, you'll see what is done well. You'll see what is done poorly. You'll begin to realize what you would repeat and what you would not do if you had your own grant. Supporting roles are not small roles. I do want to say that. They are not insignificant. Supporting roles are training grounds that are truly a gift. They are truly a gift. Years ago, I volunteered on other people's projects because I knew the value of hands-on experiences. And I find now that there are some people who are willing to volunteer, some people who are simply not. But I would encourage you to not always focus on direct financial payment, because there are other ways that you are paid when you serve and when you volunteer. Certainly it's nice to be able to get financial support if you can, and I would encourage you to do that if you can. But if you cannot, if they don't have it in the budget, I would encourage you to still consider volunteering on a grant so that you can get the experience. The experience is payment. The experience is payment. So I just want you to do a simple self-check. Here are a few questions as we kind of recap what we've talked about. A few questions that you can think about over the next couple weeks. One is, can I articulate my mission clearly and consistently? Can I articulate my mission clearly and consistently? Do I have a reliable financial system? Do I have people who can help me deliver the work? Can I delegate, make decisions, keep a project moving, ensure it is delivered well? And the final question is, do I have the time, the energy, the bandwidth to carry this forward if the grant is funded soon? And if you answered no to several of those questions, I don't believe that's failure. I think that is information. I think that is information that helps you know what you need to focus on next. So answer those questions honestly. If something is not yes, I want you to focus on building that next. So to recap, leading a grant is not about perfection. It is about preparation and a willingness to grow. You can have the big ideas, which I love, but I also want you to respect the details, right? I have a friend who always says, the devil is in the details. The devil is in the details. So I want you to have the big ideas. I want you to have the vision, but I also want you to respect the details. I believe we can also pursue impact and still protect our well-being. So we don't want to chase every grant because I don't think that protects our well-being. I want us to be intentional. We will pursue impact, and we will also be intentional about how we pursue it because we want to do good work and we want to maintain our well-being. And I believe that you can be a leader and a manager. You can build a team that helps you with both your impact and does so in such a way that your well-being is maintained. The goal is not to win a grant and suffer through it, my friend. The goal is not to win a grant and suffer through it. The goal is to lead with quality and in a way that is sustainable. That wraps up today's episode of Grant Writing Made Clear. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who might want to listen. Seriously, have you shared Grant Writing Made Clear with a friend? If not, share it with them this week. And don't forget to join us over in our Facebook community, Grant Writing Made Clear, for support and strategy. Until next time, stay focused, stay prepared, and keep becoming the leader your mission deserves. Your impact is our purpose. Take good care, my friend. Thank you for listening to Grant Writing Made Clear. I hope today's episode gave you inspiration, confidence, and clear information that you can turn into action. Remember, you are not alone. There is a whole community here striving for the same impact. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a quick review to help more people find the show, and share this episode with others in your network. It really does make a difference. For more grant writing tips and resources, follow me on social media. Until next time, keep showing up, keep learning, and remain determined. I'll talk to you next time. Goodbye for now.